Welcome to Forum Crashers, the internet advice show for all the forums that we weren't invited to. My name is Steve Messenger. I am your host, and I am here with Gerald Waldrop.
Nice to be here.
Absolutely. Nice to be here with you, buddy.
Always.
Time and time again. And we've got another set of questions that we pirated from a few forums that we went to.
Yar.
Yeah, I mostly, I have accounts on several different websites. I have not done much posting, commenting in said websites. I've saved all that excitement for right here with you.
I used to post a lot in websites. I kind of gave that up after having kids.
No. Yeah, now it's all a little bit different now. I also will say that maybe more websites should be invite only, because I will say, going through finding some of these questions, some of the commentary on some of these websites is just god awful terrible.
Back in the back in the third days, man, Ian World was the place for all questions. Actually, I got a lot of knowledge there. Yeah, a little plug, Ian World.
Ian World. I was more of a fan of E-Bomb's World. That's where you get the Shiggity Schwamsh 55 and the Time to Blow Up the World or whatever it was called. What was it?
Those are the good old pre-YouTube days, World. All right, we have questions.
Yeah,
with our age comes experience.
Exactly. I don't even know if E-Bomb's World still exists. How quickly do I let my players progress the adventure? This is from, God, I can't read this person's name. XD31.
How quickly do you let your players progress the story? Probably 100 miles per hour. That's probably the best possible speed. No, I'm not sure.
Metric? Well, I would have to imagine. Let's say you're doing more of a homebrew thing, especially because I would imagine if you're doing like a one of the campaigns that's put out there, you can kind of move at the speed of however you want. If they're cruising through it, cool, great, whatever. But if you took time to come up with your own homebrew, you came up with your own characters, your own quests, and everything else, and you're trying to really soak it up and enjoy it, and they're like, screw it, let's just go assassinate that guy. And you're like, oh, that dude's not supposed to come for 3 more weeks.
Well, I'm a big advocate of player choice. So I would say you shouldn't restrict the player's decisions artificially for a preconceived ideal of how exactly you want the story to play out. It can be more difficult to string the threads of the plot through the campaign to account for character decisions. But one of the first lessons that you should learn as a DM is that you're going to be best off learning how to roll with those punches. Characters will always make decisions that you just haven't accounted for. I've learned to incorporate that into the way I run games, coming up with multiple possible scenarios based on multiple possible choices that they might make. And even then, they're going to make surprising decisions. This really goes in, I guess, digging into really plotting out your entire story rather than just how quickly they go into it, because how quickly they go into it should, again, I guess the easy answer to that is however fast they want to make those decisions. If you want to slow them down, there's no problem with putting something that makes sense in the world that can, I don't know, distract their attention, or it can be an interesting element you're introducing into the story that will make them not head straight for the end of the campaign, if you will. If they somehow figure out a perfect combination of scry teleport to destroy your big bad evil guy, that there are plenty of things that you can do to try to sidetrack them from that, if you don't have any material beyond that particular ending that they're pursuing.
Yeah, I would think too that a great way to, if you're doing homebrew and it's your first time doing it, look at the old Zelda games. It's there's this side quest thing that goes through most of them, where it's you got to get this item to give to this guy, and once you give it to this guy, it unlocks this, and then when you go there, you get something. It's almost like you're perpetually getting a new key to another lock, and if you can kind of set it up that way, you can kind of control the pace a little bit. At the same point to Gerald's point here is if the players want to do something, let them do it. It may not be exactly what you had planned, but it makes for a more interesting story, and it'll be more fun for you once you get past the panic point.
I in my early days of DMing, that's to be expected. Be a little bit nervous about what exactly the players are going to do in the campaign, and you're gonna have to be on your toes. But if you can learn to embrace that and appreciate it, that's really part of the fun of it. Don't be too intimidated where you're not willing to try DMing. From what I'm reading online comments in D&D Facebook groups, that a lot of people have a hard time being a player and finding a group to play in when they don't have a group of friends to just play with. If you can find the enjoyment of DMing, you're going to be able to have endless entertainment. You'll have any players you want, really.
Yeah. Honestly, it's more fun when those kind of things come up. I know there was a game that I put together. It was just a one-shot dungeon crawler kind of deal, where I set up different puzzles in different rooms and whatnot. And I made this real elaborate trap where you had to pull certain chains, and this would happen, and the walls were closing in. And one of the characters, it was all this idea that you're trying to get to this opening that was too high to just jump up to. There was different mechanisms you could use to get up there. And the one character is like, "Oh, I've got pythons. I can just climb up there." I'm like, what are we even doing here, right? But it's one of those things where, like, that's the creative problem solving, and that's, those are the things that the characters bring to the table that make it fun for the DM. Because if you just do literally the thing that you plan all week at home, you're pretty much just writing a play at that point.
Right. Yeah, and you don't want to railroad. If you've played in a game where you've been railroaded, i.e., you're just on one path and there is no choice. Any choice you try to make brings you right back to that path. I've played in those games, and they can be frustrating because when you play the game, you want to be able to make choices, and it is enjoyable to see the effect that your choices have, even if they're choices that come back to haunt you. But yeah, when your choices don't matter and you have to keep following a predetermined course, it's not as enjoyable. So be flexible.
Yeah. Another tip here would be have consequences in the background that the characters probably don't even know about. So let's say, for instance, I threw at the crew here on Myths and Mystics it was kind of a side quest, but it was still part story related. How they went about it determined what would affect other missions. So there's consequences to literally everything that they do. So have some fun with that. Think 2 or 3 steps ahead, because even if the characters don't want to go that direction, you could probably use that stuff later anyways. So
absolutely
cool. Got another question here from Foul Knave B, who is active on the forums. Foul Knave says, "How can I reward my players?" Apparently, he's getting tired of doling out gold and experience.
Gosh, beer is great.
In real life and in the game.
Yeah, honestly, there are a lot of built-in mechanisms for rewarding your players. We talked about one of those before. Experience is kind of a built-in intrinsic reward for role-playing. Everyone that I've ever met that's been remotely interested in D&D and role-playing likes to see their characters advance. So giving experience is huge benefit. But there are a ton. My players feel rewarded by seeing results for their actions. We kind of just tying into our last questions. When you can see an effect, when this story has gone a different direction, or unfolded a certain way because of actions your character has taken, that's kind of an intrinsic reward. Of course, there's magic item rewards as detailed in the Dungeon Master Guide. I wouldn't go the route of the Monty Hall campaign, but when they're specific items rewarded with purpose, given meaning, I would have strongly advised against handing out a frequent +1 item. If you call magic items just plus blah, and that's all they are and do, they become quickly mundane. That magic generally is more interesting when it's more unique and there's a special reason for it. So when you give those rewards, I think that's kind of talked about in the new DMG as well. The 5th Ed DMG, give a purpose and a reason for it to be there. But experience, magic items, seeing the progression in the story are all great rewards in game.
Yeah, I think as far as the plus one items go, I think a lot of times we fall in a pitfall of like, oh, you got to get better weapons and stuff because let's face it, growing up, a lot of the games we play like Final Fantasy and all that.
Diablo grind.
Oh yeah, it was always exciting to get the next better bow or sword or whatever it may be. I really like role play specific sort of magic items. Okay. So, for instance, like in Myths and Mystics, when we're playing, virtually all the time when you're going to Olmsted to get your magic rewards, they are things that can help you out in situations, but you could also use them in combat.
Yeah.
For instance, like the pocket bar.
Yeah,
I mean,
fun item. Yeah,
yeah. I mean, at its root, it's a book that opens up into a door that takes you down into another extra dimensional bar, and you get to hang out and have drinks.
Rope trick with a kick.
Exactly. But the cool thing is that you can use it for all kinds of different things, and you guys were Pokemoning stuff left and right. So I think that kind of stuff's fun because it adds a new layer to the game and your way to explore and find different paths. So I also like someone brought this up to me a while ago, coming up with, for instance, usually when you start playing, everyone's on foot, then you get some horses or whatever. But getting to the point where like you get to pick your own horse, you get to describe what it is. I did that with a family game that I was playing, and everyone loved it. I said, here's your horse. What does it look like? And they're like, whoa, I get to describe my own horse. Like, this is awesome. I never thought about this before. And if you haven't done that in your game, maybe that's something worth trying.
Yeah, I think that ties in well when you give characters a bit of narrative control. There's the small things where you let the characters have the power, let the players have the power to describe that. Like when you let us describe the way we deal the killing blow, it's an opportunity to do something fun, to describe something fun, and add that to the story. That to be able to describe how our characters look. If you have a fantastic artist for a DM, it's definitely a big reward being able to have your character drawn up. it's super cool.
Yeah. So there's all kinds of ways you can do it. Get creative with it. But I think I think the more you can stray away from just, hey, here's golden experience, and come up with some unique things like that. Good stuff there. We had another question come in. Consulting my ancient phone here.
There's is that a 5S?
No, it's a 6 SE. It's holding up just fine. I put a new battery in it. So, I spend $600 on a new phone. I can spend $40 on a battery. They say, I noticed in the player's handbook there are options for flaws and ideals and such. What if none of them fit my character? Do I have to use them, or are there other options I can choose from?
Yeah, I mean, there's only so many psychological traits you can attribute, so you're going to have to pick what's in the player's handbook.
And if you don't, Gary Gygax will come back and wreck your game.
If you're not using what's in the rule book, you're not playing D&D. This has been more a bad D&D DM advice.
Yeah, I will say there was one time, I forget what I was rolling for, but I was using one of the charts in the book, and I rolled probably 3 times until I got the answer I wanted. It's almost like when you have the magic 8-ball and you just keep shaking it until it's like, yes, she loves you. And I'm like,
finally,
thank you.
I'm glad fate has conspired.
Yeah. So no, I don't think, if you wanted to play true, if I recall, like the very first Dungeons and Dragons, like you rolled a handful of times to get who you were, what you were, and go to town.
You originally rolled your strength, then your dexterity, then your constitution. 3d6. None of this easy 46 drop the lowest stuff we have going on.
Exactly.
Back in my day, I'm not that old. I was not playing OD&D original. No. But yeah, it was really set up as just a dungeon crawl, and story kind of developed from there, kind of with the help of the, I think, 80s, 90s with storytelling focus of World of Darkness type games. It's kind of evolved, and since RPGs became more and more popular, it's become more evident that story-based is interesting. I have So yeah, the answer to the question is if you can find something, if you don't see anything in the player's handbook that fits what you want for your character, none of it sounds interesting for your character, and you try rolling and just doesn't seem interesting, like something you want to play, look at some of the psychological traits. One of the popular psychological theories is the big 5 psychological personality traits. And they really give you a good understanding of how people work and why they work. When you see the amount of assertiveness and conscientiousness on a continuum, you can kind of pick up or come up with ideas for how your character will react in situations by just attributing how far up these scale on each of these major 5 personality traits your character has. But aside from just assigning personality traits, it's probably most compelling to come up with some important events that happened in the life to lead them to where they are now. Those are probably the most essential questions.
I think what's really ruined it for a lot of people is, let's say games like Diablo, where let's say before you could like respec and all that stuff, like there were these complete guides that were made of how to make the absolute best. I can't remember the names, like the sorceress that was just meteors or chain lightning and all this.
Yeah.
And it's
Hydra
like
sorceress.
Yeah, you had to put all your points in these specific spots, and you had to get these specific items. I think for a lot of folks now coming to D&D that grew up with video games more than they did tabletop, you don't want to screw up your character. You don't want to be doomed to be playing someone who sucks, right? You want to have, if you're going to play an assassin, you want to play an excellent assassin. If you're going to play the tank, you want to be the best tank. How do you expect to be that tank? And you can power game all you want, but I think taking a chance on some of these things that are more of the role-playing side, why not? Roll the dice, and if it's like, kind of seems like a weird quirk or a weird flaw, go with it.
See if you like it. I mean, in the real world, people change over time when they have experiences, and you can certainly find reasons that can be as realistic or not as you want in your campaign for your character to change. And certainly, you grow. Your characters grow in power, and they gain new abilities. And there's some built-in flexibility in the mechanics for being able to change out like spells that you get as a sorcerer. So you change over time. Your character should be able to evolve, and there's no reason to think that your character's personality shouldn't also be able to change. So don't be afraid to try something new, just like you said.
And if your character's a think about changing. You're there to be one. If you work a retail job or you work in a restaurant, this is your great opportunity to live out all the things that you got to work out.
I've definitely had players, and even as a DM, there's a bit of a guilty pleasure in just getting to play that guy.
Be that guy. Be that guy. Well, I thank you all for tuning in this week. Truly appreciate everyone checking this out, and then also checking out Missing Mystics. We play every Friday, 11 p.m. Eastern Standard Time on Twitch. Feel free to swing over there, check that out. If you want to send us questions that we can answer on the show, like the last one we just got, send it over to missingmystics@gmail.com. Everything else is posted at the website. That's the .com. Just check that out over there. Thanks for tuning in. We love you. We'll see you next time.